Hello and welcome to another episode of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 93 for April 14, 2023. Today we'll talk about contributions to Campfire and, well, anything else you want to talk about. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support. We have Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for PlantAnApp, and who knows, maybe some of the other personalities will show up as we go. This is an event we do every week this same hour, and it's all skill levels welcome. We get together and talk about PlantAnApp in general and in specific, your particular challenges and experiences. So please do engage with us. All of our past episodes are recorded and put out there on YouTube at youtube.com/PlantAnApp. We'll run this agenda today, which is our traditional one, where we'll do some introductions and then first call, whatever it is that you've got going on, and then we'll touch on some of the other areas. I know we're going to focus some on some contributions to the Campfire website. After an hour or so, we'll go into our Afterglow segment. If anyone wants to hang around, we'll just turn off the recording and talk about other topics. But do engage, jump in, show and tell, chat with us. If you have noise going on behind you, we encourage you to use the mute button. You can submit questions and topics in advance. That's with this QR code, or it's also a link on the emails that we send to you. Good morning, all who are in mourning, I guess.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I need to record that piece and just push play. Okay. We're going to move right to first call. What do you got going on?
I have a follow-up with Patrick to an issue he and I were discussing yesterday, since he's not so tired and sweaty this afternoon.
Well, by all means, hopefully it's the end, and the answer he gave you worked exactly as he described it.
No.
Well, tell us.
We were confused, but I did find an answer, but I don't know if it's just I don't know how to do it right, or if it's a bug. And the problem we were having was I have been using the single file upload, was moving to the file manager, and we got that working, but we weren't getting tokens returned to us to some messages. The token values weren't coming back. And it turned out that I was loading the file and processing it, but downstream, one of my workflows was blowing up, and that's why the tokens weren't properly being initialized and things weren't being returned. The difference between the single file upload and the file manager, though, is that the single file upload, when it would upload the file was available for use. When the file manager uploads the file, and the file is not available unless you go out and sync to the DNN file system. And that was what was causing the blow up.
Really, the file manager is not triggering a.
Right. So I found 1,001 things you can do with DNN Sharp video, where Mihai talked about building a Razor script to synchronize the file system. Or
Don't we have
token.
an action that does that also? I thought.
So. I couldn't find one. And I was looking for options, in the file manager for doing it.
I think it's for specific folders. Can you type folder in there?
Are you saying that the file is not accessible in the same action stack or anytime unless you?
If for definitely in the same action stack, and in looking at the file system via FTP, in this case, I was uploading a CSV file, and the CSV file was there in the file system, but apparently DNN looks at files with a .resources extension.
Ah, you were in a secure folder.
Yeah, it depends on the folder type. Yep.
And so the secure that functionality, the file was there with the .resources, but it was empty. And zero
Okay, so I'm going to take an action item to retest this functionality with a secure folder, but I'm pretty confident that in a standard folder that the files get created and are
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I've used that, and they definitely are available in the DNN file manager after.
Verify that as well.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about this, and this is probably stuff that you've already encountered, but the file manager field type in action form has a lot of parameters to it. And
right.
Down at the bottom, there's this for each file section, which returns the tokens so that you can manipulate if there are many files that get uploaded.
And that's what he's using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this should give you the file name, URL, physical path, and so we do need to definitely look to verify that the synchronization mechanism works well. So what are your just making sure that I understand let me put it this way. What you should be able to do would be to upload multiple files and then attach them to an email and send to somebody. The send email action, I know I've bumped into this before. If the file exists on the file system, but not synchronized into DNN, that the send action would fail because it doesn't recognize the file's really there. So does that case represent what you're trying to do with it, or?
So in the for each file, I am running a workflow of to process those files, and down in that workflow, and it's about 3 workflows deep. When it actually tries to load that file into a CSV import, it blows up with the file not existing.
And are you trying to, and I know it's not here in this spot, I'm going to, are you trying to use, for example, a create list from a CSV source, or do you know what action you're using?
It's probably create list from a CSV within a workflow. I can share my screen and we can look at it if you'd like.
Yep. So I see that this offers CSV file and CSV text.
It would be a file with.
Okay. Well, I'll try that exact scenario, and we'll do it in both a secure and an insecure folder to see if that makes a difference.
And the test that I found was that if I run the file upload the file to the system and just capture the relative URL, I could, if I took that relative URL and pasted it directly into my workflow, it would fail. But then
that's the problem, because you're in a secure folder, right? If you use the relative URL, that is going to
won't
be
work.
problematic.
Well, except that once I run the sync, then the same link from the relative URL succeeds.
Yeah, I would have expected that it wouldn't, because well, I'm sorry, if you're using a secure folder, I would expect that it wouldn't, because secure folders are supposed to prevent you from downloading those files. And
And actually I was going to suggest the possibility that maybe you just work with file IDs instead of
Well, it's giving back what I see going out there is in the relative URL is a link click.
oh yeah, that'll
yeah, mhm. A link click will.
That's what's coming out of the
Okay, yeah,
relative
okay.
URL field on in the file
right.
manager.
So if
Yeah,
you're
when you said relative URL, the first thing that went through my mind is a path, but if it's a link
Oh.
click, it should work. Yeah.
yeah, but if you tried to use a relative URL here, and it's a link click, like if you try to use an expression here, that is a relative URL, but it's a link click, it actually has to be downloaded. A link click isn't going to resolve into it's not really a file, right? So I don't think that might be an area of issue, right? So what you if you want it to be in a secure folder, is that correct?
I don't know that for sure. So
Well, I think if you
I mean, I don't remember.
if you don't care about if it's in a secure folder, and you were to create a standard folder, that all this would work just as you think it should.
So my pushback to that is that the single file upload works fine. I mean, get the link click that comes from it when it uploads the file.
Okay.
And the only reason I was trying to go to file manager is I have a requirement to do some drag and drop, and I could.
Really, I thought single file manager would actually work with drag and drop as well.
I didn't see a way to single file upload.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not really revealed anywhere, but yeah, if you drag a file on top of the button, it'll upload it.
Yeah, I did that just this week, and I actually used CSS to make the button larger, to make a bigger landing pad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, then I won't have a problem.
I almost mentioned that to you yesterday, Jim, but then I thought that maybe the interface is really what you wanted, but the way it looks, because it actually makes an outlined area, and yeah, but
no, it's because that just needed. What we have are files, invoice files, and things coming in from via email, and the complaint is, oh, I have to download them to upload them. And we just want to drag them over and drop them on a button or something. But if all I have to do is reconfigure the button, I left the other control intact. Yep.
Happen to catch that?
I did.
Yep. So it will work.
You could on your yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. Choose file.
Yeah, we don't have a configuration for that label, I don't think. And I'm not sure if it's a in the resx or not either.
Yeah, we don't get to name that button.
Does anybody else know if it's in resx? I'm not sure. Because you could, if it was configurable, you could do it with JavaScript also. But if it was configurable, you could just put in parenthesis, click or drag a file here, something like that.
Let's see. So this.
So Mark, when you restyled that, did you?
No, I didn't change the words on the button, but I did put that very same text-based instructions just above it. I said drag your files here. I would have liked to have changed the button, but I didn't pursue it.
Well, let's take a look and see if that can be done. It won't take long. I think I know where this lives. Hmm. And what was it? The word
Choose file, I believe.
whose file?
It is
File
file upload.single. Yep. So it's a regex value. Of course, that changes it for all.
Yes, for any use of the.
But the functionality would be available everywhere for not doing anything. So
Right.
Yep. So let's save that, and I think we'll have to refresh cache here. There it is.
okay.
That's great.
And I'm going to get it up on the screen here. That path. Oop. Yes, so for Bootstrap 5, this is the path where that lives, and also the new Razor. So what we're now calling the Bootstrap 3.
Can you paste that in the chat?
Sure. And then the legacy Bootstrap 3 has a different path, which is this one. And that's one of the challenges or things to think about when you're converting from the older Bootstrap 3 engine to Bootstrap 5. If you do localization, you might need to move your localizations. Cool. So we have something to investigate, make sure it works, but your problem is solved.
Right.
So that's
So before I disassembled my use of file manager, do you want me to send you something showing the problem that
I think
see?
I understand the case and can prove it
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you.
And also we have a recording of yesterday's, what you and I discussed yesterday too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only difference between yesterday and today is I found that if I resynced, that it would work.
Well, that could well be a bug. I found a different bug this week in that same kind of area where actually somebody else reported the issue and I confirmed it. So I don't want to overstate my role in it, but that something that works well in a standard folder didn't work in a secure folder, and it's so I'm sure it's an oversight that's easily corrected. We just got to get in there and do it. So. Good. All right. Somebody else have a first call.
Well, I was waiting for someone to have an issue that was more burning hot than mine, but I have more like a brainstorming, can we do this kind of question.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Similar to what Jim's talking about, I am curious if something like a single file upload or the file manager could be used to, I hesitate to say directly, but because it might be done vicariously, access folders on the user's computer, not on the server. And I'll give you the scenario because it might help you understand. I just want to build a photo indexer and star rating applicator kind of thing. I want to be able to find photos based on keywords or ratings. So that would require the ability to process a photo file through the system and memorize where it's stored and some attributes about the file. But I don't want the files to be online. I want them to be local. Might be the wrong tool for the job, but hey, you know, when you're carrying around a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm. Well, so when you say, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with how it, I mean, if you don't publish a folder online, it's not going, some remote can't have access to it, right? So I don't know how you would, I don't know how you'd get there.
Right.
Mark, you're talking about basically having a web application view the file structure on a local client's machine.
That would be question one. Yes.
Quick answer to that is no. And you won't ever find that ability because that's going to violate security. Web browser should never have the ability to do that because that violates your privacy and your security. Someone could write an application to literally go through your computer and make modifications. So quick answer to that is you're never going to find that.
That makes sense to me. Let's change the equation a little bit. What if the website we're running on localhost?
I would say,
If it's on, yeah, at that point, sorry, Dale, go ahead.
no, I absolutely agree with where you're going. Go ahead.
Now I was gonna say, if it's local host, you're on the same server, then absolutely you should have access to it. You may not have, depending on the location, if the files are within the portals directory of the portal that you're in, then you'll be able to see it using actions and whatnot. If it's outside of the website, at that point, you would have to use something like a Razor script, where it's going to start looking at physical file locations. And as long as the website application pool, the user that it uses, has access to that folder, then yes, you'll have access to those files.
Just
Yeah,
in a brainstorming kind of way, I think you can set up IIS to make a folder appear under a file structure in the site.
yeah.
So that would be kind of another way, although
Those are
synchronized.
only accessible through IIS. You're talking virtual folders?
Yeah,
Yeah, virtual folders, PlantAnApp can't see those.
right. So
Because that's strictly like if you were to type in at the top address bar a URL using that file structure, that path, then IIS will translate it and point to the correct directory because IIS is the one in control of that. But if you try to navigate to that path using code, you're never going to find it because it actually doesn't exist and IIS doesn't expose that. If you wanted to do something like that, what you would have to do is you would have to use junction links to actually create a alias link of a folder that for the operating system, for all intents and purposes, it appears like the folder is there, but in reality, the source of that folder is located somewhere completely different.
Is that the same
There's
mapped drive?
No, it is not the same as a map drive because a map drive is only going to exist when you log in as a user. When you're talking about junction links, you would have to use a DOS command called mklink. And mklink is going to actually make a physical link so that even, not logged in as a user, a specific user, you're still going to have access to that location.
Right, learned something new today.
I've had to do this on multiple occasions because, for example, I have a situation where I have a server, a website that's actually producing a CSV file, and that CSV file has to be dumped on a shared folder on another server. Now, initially, that's what they did, is they gave me a shared folder, but
Mhm.
there's no way. I tried the IIS, virtual directory. PlantAnApp can't see that. I tried accessing it using its UNC path. That's not accessible either. It's not a valid way of doing things. So eventually what I ended up doing is, if I did an MK link, I linked the share drive as a folder within the portals directory.
Mhm.
So at that point, I can use relative path from portals 0 as an example, / and then whatever my MK link folder was. That folder, even though it looks like it's there, physically its source is a share folder elsewhere. And PlantAnApp can see that and can utilize that. So
Did that have to be synchronized to the?
no.
the
Well, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I use it through RazorScript, so I don't care about synchronization because I just use I use my VB script languaging, and I use directory commands and whatnot to manipulate the files as I need.
So, just kicking other ideas around, and I don't know that it helps your scenario, Mark, but like the using the Amazon S3 provider, so publishing the folder, publishing the photos. It wouldn't be on the website. It could be a site under the user's control, but an S3 location, which then can be mapped into PlantAnApp and used. That's another kind of remote storage thing.
Thanks. That's a good idea. I like alternatives like that. Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, the conversation is
I
always
try.
better when Ben's here.
There's actually another tool. I'm looking for it right now that I can share once I find it. Because the thing with MK Link is, once you do it, you don't need to do it again. So like, I've created MK links and it's to set it and forget it. And I don't do it that often, so I forget how to do it. Hold on one second. Oh, here it is. I have to find the right server. Hold on, I'm gonna post a link. I believe. Oh, crud, is that the right one? Oh, God. All right, give me a second. I'll let you guys know when I find it.
Talk amongst yourselves, he says.
While Ben's doing that, I would say that the alternate idea that I was mulling around also was maybe not necessarily using PlantAnApp interface to move files around and then remember where. I wondered if maybe my interface that I would create would just record where I'm putting files on my local drive. And it's not really, I'm not as concerned about the location really as I am about keywords and ratings, because I need to be able to find, if I need a file that has an umbrella in it, I want to be able to type in umbrella and have it tell me what file name or hopefully where it is.
So are you using any tool to identify what's in the picture?
I am not using a tool. That would be an awesome addition. I'm thinking of tagging them myself on entry.
Yep, Amazon has a tool for that. I haven't cracked the automated way to do that, but they have an AI tool that you can put your photos up in an S3 bucket and then run recognition on it. It will tell you that it has a cat or a bridge or a person, people. And
Really? That's an Amazon tool, not a Google tool?
Amazon tool, AWS. So definitely, if you got a lot of photos that you're trying to do that to, I would take a look at that.
Thanks,
I
Bill.
just threw into chat. That's it's a 64-bit extension that you can install. Once you run that, then it makes it a lot easier to use the mk link command instead of using it through a command prompt. What you could do is, for example, right click on one folder, say copy link, then go to the folder you want to put the link into, and then say paste as a junction, and then it creates the mk link for you to that folder.
Okay, I can see. Yeah, imagine that.
So I also put in the chat this recognition that I used before, and I think this is the one. Yeah, yep, I think so. Cool. All right, now we're down to third call. What else?
Thanks, guys.
Oh, sure.
All right, I have a question. I'm pretty sure I think I know the answer to this already, but just in case anyone else has ever tried anything like this. I am, for a lack of a better way of explaining it, I'm visually tweaking a third-party ASPX type website. So I don't have access to the source code, but the people that created the software created it for the entire state of New York. And for the particular project that is using it that I'm working with, this department needs additional constraints and abilities. And the company is not really willing to make those modifications because it would mean changes to the application across the state for everyone else. So what I've been doing is creating JavaScripts to kind of do my own little magic, so to speak, and change the user interface and how it appears to everyone. Sorry, I just realized my video was off. That being said, one of the things that I did with PlantAnApp to integrate it to make it a little more dynamic is I created APIs on a PlantAnApp site, and I call that, I basically injected JavaScript into their source file. That calls a JavaScript, pulls the API data down, and then the JavaScript runs through whatever the return results are, and then it'll like disable and hide certain controls or whatever it needs to do. One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is be able to supply a query string with a default value for a dropdown. They don't offer that as a feature. I can do it, but the problem is when you change the selection manually, it runs their own backend code for that button, for that dropdown control on selected index change. When I do it through JavaScript, it doesn't perform that. So I have to manually do a postback. When I do that, it causes an infinite loop because of the way my JavaScript is written. It says, you know, if I see there's a value in the URL, then change the dropdown to that value and then do a postback. But when I do that and it comes back, it does the same thing. Oh, the value's in the URL, change the value, do a postback. So then I get stuck in a loop. When I've looked, I don't know how much I actually want to admit here, but let's just say when I look at some stuff, I realize what they're doing is they're putting these values in session variables. So my question is, does anyone know of a way to, using JavaScript, inject data into a session variable? And the wheels turn.
Could you replace the session variable with one of your own?
The thing is, I don't know how to access a session variable through JavaScript. That's my point. Like, can it be done? I don't want to lead people into an answer, but I mean, basically, from what I've gathered, it doesn't appear to be possible. But I don't know if anyone has come up with some sort of a response or a workaround. What in the world are you using?
That's pretty cool, Dale.
What is this?
AI.
It's AI.
Yep.
You weren't here last week.
I want this.
Dale's just a very quick typist.
PHP.
I notice when AI is typing along like that, it doesn't get backspace, backspace, backspace like I have to do.
That whole response is in the chat. I'll give you some ideas about how it might be able to be done. You saw the first part of the answer is, not directly, no.
Right. That's kind of what I understood. But like I said, I wasn't sure if someone like, because you know what, there's so many times where people have said, no, you can't do that. And then some way, shape, or form, I found a way around it.
What is your language of choice?
For me, well, server-side code is VB, and then obviously JavaScript on the client side.
Possibly jQuery.
See, that's the thing. I don't have control over a lot of this website. I'm basically opening up their ASPX files and inserting my own scripts in it. So this site that they've created, which is very antiquated, doesn't have jQuery loaded up. So I don't have access to jQuery. And the other issue too is that every time an update gets applied, basically all of my custom code gets wiped out. So I have to keep a copy of this massive script that I have. And every time an update's applied, I have to kind of rush back in before they turn the site live again and re-add my script in there.
So you can't use jQuery?
Nope. This is why I've been trying to do everything straight through Java.
Script. So Ben, have you tried, you say you have your connection strings in a dropdown and you're trying to choose it with JavaScript or jQuery, is that right?
Well, the values.
Values are,
Yeah.
but they're in I think the significant point I'm asking about is it in a dropdown and you're trying to choose it?
Yeah, and that part I got to work. Basically I wrote Java that will look at the query string at the top. It'll pull out the value of whatever, I call it a decode. So it takes that decode value, then it searches for the drop-down object. If it finds it and the decode value was both supplied, so neither of them are null, then it's going to jump into an if statement, and that if statement will run through all of the values in that dropdown. When it finds something that matches the decode, it sets that one as the selected, and then it breaks out of the loop. That works because it changes the value of the dropdown. The problem is, I would have thought that changing the selected item would automatically kick off the server side's selected index change event, and it doesn't.
Right.
I have to kick it off manually.
Well, there are a small list of JavaScript codes that you could try that will trigger that on-change action. I think one of them is on-change, another one is .click. And you can try those. And the second point that I would make is there sometimes needs to be a small time delay when a drop-down is changed. So I would nest whatever you're trying to do inside a little set timeout.
Yeah,
Second or half a second.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I can change the value. That's not the issue. That delay would have been needed. Well, I have one already, but that delay is more along the lines of making sure that an object exists so that you can make that change. So I'm not crashing. I currently have, I think, a 250 millisecond delay. And that's more than enough because it does function. It's just that the built-in server-side code isn't triggering. And again, if I trigger it manually, then
Sure, yeah, I've
the
seen that a
side
million
effect
times.
is I
But
get
you can
stuck in
still
an infinite loop.
trigger it with code though. You just have to find the right one. I sometimes play, I try this one, I try that one, but there's one on change and there's one dot click. And I'm
Well,
pretty sure
those are
there's a
over.
third.
Yeah, but those are overrides. Like that's if I wanted to create my own on change, like if I wanted to hook into it,
No,
and I could definitely do that as well. But for
no,
the existing ASPX code that's there, that's already compiled into their DLL, that's the piece because when I happen to know that their drop down basically what it does is it does a full post back of the page. So there really is no other way than me right now mimicking that same thing and say, hey, do a post back, but they're dumping it into session variables. So if I do a post back, if I can't get my values in the session variable, the page won't load correctly. This is where it all boils down to, like, I know it's a session variable. If I could get those two values into session, then do a post back, I'd be golden. But
So
unfortunately, that's what I got to figure out.
I emailed you that hint from that included avoiding jQuery. So hopefully that will
Oh, awesome. Thank
bring
you.
you closer to that. I don't know, that's all untested, whatever, but at least it's something possible.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So I highlighted this as Campfire Contributions Week, and we had a couple of new ones. We briefly went through some. There was a stack of them here from earlier in the month, and several contributors, Anthony and Patrick and myself. But I've added 3 since last week. So connected forms is one. So this shows how to use connected forms. I know some on this call have definitely taken advantage of those before. And it's kind of verbose in explaining how to do it. And there's a video related to showing exactly how this solution went together. But the idea is you've got a tab and it's got a form but no button. They wanted to do multi-step. So there's another form that's connected, and when you click it, it's going back to the required fields on the first form. And when you actually get everything filled in, the values are available from both the first form and the second form. So that's out here, and it's completely explained how to do it in a video, and you can see the example. So that's one of them. The other is the other two that I thought are kind of interesting is I did a couple of Razor tokens, and so the first one talks about I had a particular. Oh no, this is not the one I was going to start to talk about, but a Razor token that returns back all of the DLLs that are mentioned in the web config file, so that you can understand what's out there and also look for duplications within the web config. So for example, on my system, this diagnostic source is mentioned 8 different times. So there's some junk in my web config that's worth cleaning up, and I haven't done that yet. So this is illustrating a couple things. First of all, if we look at the listing itself, and I think Ben has mentioned this technique in the past, the data source for this is a SQL query that's taking a JSON and revealing it as through a SQL query, through OpenJSON. So that's kind of a cool technique to directly turn JSON into something that you can put as a into a listing. But then this this token itself, if we were to go to configuration and look at my tokens, and I've just kind of started an area here, web config tools. So DLLs as tokens, this reveals all the DLLs in a nice JSON structure. So it's getting the name and the version and the count of how many times it's being used. So that's a token that's out there that you can grab and take advantage of if you want to. And for anybody who's watching this recording afterwards, these are available on campfire.plantanapp.com. And if you regularly participate in the Campfire website, we'll give you credentials, excuse me, the Campfire discussion, this discussion will give you credentials onto this so that you can take a look at it. So that is the first contribution, the first Razor script contribution. And then another one is that the web config that I was working with had a lot of junk in it. When you install content in DNN, let's take a look at my config manager here. And we look at the web config and scoot on down to this area of concern. Every time that you do an upgrade, this dependent assembly gets commented. So it says it's upgraded by blah, blah, blah. It's got a dependent assembly, and it shows the old value so that it retains it forever. And so this section gets all junked up. What I built was a Razor token that removes comments from the web config. And so it's removing specific ones, ones that start with upgraded by or just dependent assembly. And so you run the token, it does the work, creates a new file. And so it's just done by evaluating. When you do this, it evaluates when you evaluate the token, it runs the script. And so you end up with a new file. And when you run it, it gives you the name of the file that it created. I'm not revealing the web config. Obviously, that would not be something I want to do here. But the idea is that it's just creating a new copy. So if you have access to the file system, you would have access to look at the contents. So I've already done that. And so if I look in my config manager, in my case, I've set this one up to just create a single output. My first implementation of this was to create one that created a new one by the date and time, but it doesn't remove all comments. We see here that we have other comments that still remain. But if we get down into this area of concern, you can see now it's mostly cleaned up. See, there was a comment here someplace, this one. So other things that didn't fit the pattern of what I was doing were not removed, but most of them were removed. So hopefully those, if anybody else is bothered by the junk that's in a web config file,
Does that junk impede performance? Or is it just?
I think in a minor way. I think the web config tends to get read once per session. So in my case, what I started with was a 2,000 line web config that went down to 1,200 lines. So, but it's not noticeable. It's more for me to be able to read it and what's in there.
No, I just think I have a web config that's 8 or 10 years old, so it's gone through lots of updates.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so I was headed down the path of trying to clean all these up, to get a good web config file. One of the reasons, one of the underlying support issue for PlantAnApp is compatibility with 2sexy. TooSexy does some things in the web config that are challenging to us, the way that they target their DLLs, interferes with the way that we target our DLLs. And so there's a whole procedure with how do you clean that up. But when you're working with a web config file that is a mess, it's harder to spot the stuff, right? So this was kind of tools for me to use to take care of some of that. But yeah, tokens available for your use if you want them.
Thanks, Dale.
Absolutely. So that was those two. What else do we have? Anybody doing beta testing on 25? I don't know if you saw, it was last week, Good Friday. It was, I thought it was going to be just me, but it turns out we did have a couple of other participants and we did beta testing while on the call and identified a few bugs that we ran through the beta testing.
How much longer is that open, Dale?
At least through this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, I hope to still get in there and do that.
Good. We, I think we had originally targeted trying to get the version out next week, and with some personnel, vacation, holiday issues, I don't know if it'll make next week. It might be the week following now, but our Romanian counterparts are off Monday and tomorrow and Monday. Excuse me, today and Monday.
Yeah, likewise, Easter set B back quite a bit.
So Bogdan took his day off to join us. That's nice.
He did. He's Bogdan is driven. And he'll tell you that. So yeah, and I know I have meetings scheduled with him on Monday too. So yeah, he's no time to waste. There's a lot going on here.
These are my favorite working days when everybody in holidays.
I'm sorry, you're a little muffled there, sir.
I said these are my favorite working days when people are out of office because I can get more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. What else? We have 7 minutes, or we can call it early. I'm good with either one. I, for one, am welcome. I'm glad to have Patrick back. He was out all last week, and nope, we miss him when he's gone.
Thanks.
All right, I will do just that. I'm going to call it early. We thank you for participating in the low-code campfire. Hope you find value, and since you show up week by week, I suspect there's a little bit of something in there for you. But we'll adjourn to Afterglow for a few minutes. I'm not going to be able to hang around too long, but hopefully it'll be a good session. All right, talk to you guys in a bit.